This is not a game. This is not fiction. This is a true story of terror, taunting, and a killer who dance with the media like a puppet master. There are some crimes so haunting, so diabolically clever that they transcend time. They crawl beneath our skin, echo in headlines decades later, and whisper in the ears of amateur sleuths, professional profilers, and code breakers who refuse to sleep until the mystery is solved. One such case belongs to a ghost, a shadow, a name chosen by the killer himself, the Zodiac. The Zodiac killer didn't just murder, he made murder a performance. His victims weren't just bodies, they were messages. Every act of violence came with a letter, a riddle, a puzzle designed not just to scare, but to paralyze a nation. Between 1968 and 1969, a string of murders across Northern California would trigger one of the largest and most confounding manhunts in American history. But it wasn't just the killings that terrified people, it was the voice behind them. The killer wrote dozens of letters to newspapers. They came stamped with a crosshair symbol and filled with taunts, threats, and encrypted ciphers. Some were cracked, revealing chilling statements like, "I like killing people because it's so much fun." Others remain unsolved to this day, cold, silent challenges, daring the world to decode the mind behind the madness. But who was the Zodiac killer? Why did he stop? Did he stop? And perhaps most disturbingly, was he ever caught? This is not just the story of a serial killer. This is the story of how fear can take a name, put on a mask, and outwit generations of law enforcement, journalists, and citizen detectives. It's about how a handful of crimes, meticulously calculated and cruelly executed, could send an entire state into a spiral of panic. San Francisco, Vallejo, Lake Berryessa, cities that became crime scenes. Lovers parked in cars who never made it home. The Zodiac did not discriminate by gender, age, or location. But he always left something behind, a puzzle, a clue, a feeling that he was watching, always watching. While police scrambled to collect evidence, while forensic science struggled in its infancy, the Zodiac sat somewhere in the shadows, sipping his coffee, circling newspaper articles about himself, and smiling. He had the world's attention, and he knew it. He also knew how to keep it. The media became his stage, his letters the script. He taunted police with facts only the killer would know, threatened to bomb school buses, and promised more bloodshed if his riddles weren't published. America, in a way, became his hostage. For months, then years, the Zodiac remained in the headlines. Dozens of suspects were interrogated, fingerprints compared, and evidence combed through by candlelight. But the killer was always one step ahead. He had no digital trail, no DNA on record, and no pattern that could predict his next move. Just a name and a symbol, Zodiac, and then he vanished. No arrest, no confession, no confirmed sightings, just silence. But the question remains, did the Zodiac ever truly disappear? Or did he simply change faces, walk among us, shopping for groceries, attending school meetings, blending into the very society he once terrorized? This documentary peels back the layers of that chilling mystery. We'll trace the known killings, explore the psychology behind his codes, dive into the lives of those forever altered by his actions, and examine the suspects, some credible, some desperate. We'll confront the theories, the conspiracy, and the hope that justice might still be waiting in a strand of DNA or a long-forgotten letter. Because in the end, the Zodiac killer wasn't just a murderer. He was a symbol of something darker, a reminder that the human mind, when twisted enough, can become more dangerous than any weapon, and that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who leave behind clues we still can't understand. Lean in, look closer, listen carefully, because this story, it's not over. It never was. It started on a quiet road, two teenagers, a car, a moonless night, and a figure that emerged from the dark, not to rob, not to warn, but to kill. That's how the Zodiac made his debut. The first shot wasn't heard by the world. It echoed shaves softly on a cold December night in 1968, on a desolate stretch of road in Benicia, California. A lover's lane, the kind of place teenagers go to escape the world. But for David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, it would become a place of silence, a place of death, and a place where the Zodiac killer first dipped his hands into blood. December 23, 1968, Lake Herman Road. David was 17, clean-cut, bright, college-bound. Betty Lou, just 16, was shy, studious, and smitten. That night they were on their first real date, a Christmas concert, then a drive. Innocent plans, shattered by fate. At approximately 11:15 p.m., their station wagon was parked on a gravel turnout along Lake Herman Road. Sometime between then and 11:30 p.m., someone approached the vehicle. We don't know what words were exchanged, if any, but the killer acted with purpose. He forced them out of the car. David was shot at close range in the head. Betty Lou ran. She didn't get far. Bullets tore into her back as she fled across the gravel, collapsing face down just 28 feet from the car. 10 shell casings littered the scene, a cold, methodical slaughter. There were no witnesses, no footprints, no tire impressions, just fear and a whisper of something much bigger to come. Benicia police investigated, but the case quickly grew cold. The motive? Unclear. Robbery was ruled out. There were no signs of sexual assault. It seemed the killer's only goal was the kill itself. For months, it was treated as a tragic but isolated murder. But it wasn't. It was only the beginning. July 4th, 1969, Thurton, Blue Rock Springs. 7 months later, just across the Carquinez Strait in Vallejo, terror returned. This time, louder. It was Independence Day. Fireworks lit the skies. Music poured from open windows. But in the shadows, the killer was watching. And waiting. Darlene Farron, 22, was vibrant, well-liked, and married. But that night, she was with a friend, Michael Mageau, 19. The two parked in Darlene's Corvair near Blue Rock Springs Park just before midnight. Moments later, a car pulled in behind them. It sat silently, headlights blinding. Then, it drove off. But not for long. Minutes later, the car returned. A man exited and walked toward them with a flashlight in one hand and a 9mm Luger in the other. Without a word, he opened fire. Michael was hit in the jaw, leg, and neck. Darlene was struck multiple times in the arms and back. The killer walked away. But hearing Michael's moans, he returned and fired 2 more shots into each victim. Then he calmly drove off into the night. Darlene died on arrival at the hospital. Michael, miraculously, survived. He would be the Zodiac's only confirmed survivor who got a good look at the killer's face. The first call. A killer introduces himself. Less than an hour later, the Vallejo Police Department received a chilling phone call. I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye. The voice was male, calm, controlled, no slurring, no panic. The call was traced to a gas station phone booth, just blocks from the station, still warm when officers arrived. The Zodiac had now made contact. He was no longer content with killing. He wanted credit, attention, power. The detail he gave about the caliber, the distance from the station, and the previous murders were not yet public. It was him. There was no doubt. The letters begin. 3 weeks later, on August 1st, 1969, 3 newspapers received nearly identical letters. The San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each began the same way. Dear editor, I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl last 4th of July. Each letter included details only the killer could have known. Bullet placement, witnessless facts, and timelines. But they also included something else, a cipher. 1/3 of a 408-character encrypted message, signed with a strange crosshair-like symbol. He demanded the ciphers be printed on the front page of each paper. Or he threatened to go on a killing rampage that would make the events in Zodiac, a reference to astrology or perhaps fate, seem tame. And just like that, the Zodiac killer had a name. He gave it to himself. The first cipher cracked. The code was solved a week later, not by police but by a school teacher and his wife. The message, chilling and childlike, read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest. Man is the most dangerous animal of all." It ended cryptically, "When I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all that I have killed will become my slaves." There was no name in the cleric, as the killer promised. "I am not afraid of the gas chamber," he wrote, "because it will send me to paradise all the sooner." Authorities were stunned. Analytical. This wasn't a madman scribbling threats in blood. This was someone intelligent, articulate, calculating, and completely devoid of empathy. The survivor speaks. Michael Maggio described the killer as a white male, 5'8" now to 6 feet tall, stocky, possibly 200 pounds. He wore dark clothes and his hair was brown. But the flashlight the killer used blinded him from getting more detail. Despite surviving, Michael was never able to provide a facial composite that led to a definitive suspect. Said his description, however, matched several other sightings across future Zodiac crime scenes. And one detail stood out. The killer moved with strange coordination, suggesting military or tactical training. Thoughtful. The police response. Informative. Vallejo Police, Venetian investigators, and the FBI launched a joint effort. For the first time in California history, agencies began sharing information across cities to track a single serial killer. But the Zodiac anticipated every move. He used different calibers, varied his locations, and left no fingerprints, no DNA, no tire tracks. Deliberately, he was not driven by lust, theft, or rage, but by obsession, intensely. Obsession with control, with outsmarting the system, with becoming a legend, gravely. And it worked. The shift in fear. By August 1969, the public began to panic. Lovers' lanes were deserted, police presence tripled in park areas, teenagers stayed home, and newspapers, hungry for headlines, fed the hysteria, giving the Zodiac exactly what he wanted, dramatically, an audience. Zodiac became a name across dinner tables, printed in bold across newspapers, and scrawled across police whiteboards. It wasn't just the murder that scared people. It was the unknown. Thoughtfully, who was this man? Why the symbols? Why the riddles? Why the taunts? And perhaps more terrifying, gravely, was he watching them now? Key evidence collected. Factual shell casings. At both Lake Herman and Blue Rock Springs, shell casings were recovered and matched to specific firearms. They were clean. Informative. Survivor testimony. Michael Maggio's story became crucial in confirming the Zodiac's link between the two murders. Phone booth. The phone used to confess was dusted for prints. Nothing usable. Letters. The Zodiac's handwriting was analyzed by graphologists. Loop spacing, pressure, and linguistic quirks. But nothing definitive came up. Frustrated. Gravely, he was a ghost with a gun and a pen. Somberly, these first two killings, spanning just 7 months, set the tone for what would become one of the most infamous, unsolved murder sprees in American history. But the Zodiac was just warming up. The letters would continue, the body count would rise, the ciphers would grow more complex, and as investigators chased shadows, the killer only grew. And the answer was coming far too soon. Most killers leave behind bodies. This one left behind puzzles, pages soaked in arrogance, stained with ego. He didn't just crave attention, he demanded worship. For most serial killers, the crime is the climax. The act of murder scratches an itch. Then they vanish, hide, and wait for the need to return. But the Zodiac was different. The killing wasn't enough, not for him. He didn't just want the blood, he wanted the spotlight. To him, murder was only part of the message. His real weapon was the written word. And with every letter, every cipher, every sick taunt and riddle, he transformed himself from a faceless murderer to a myth. The Zodiac wasn't hiding, he was performing. The beginning of the correspondence. August 1st, 1969. 3 letters, 3 newspapers, 3 targets. The San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, the Vallejo Times-Herald, Each received a nearly identical message from the killer, all handwritten in uppercase block lettering, tight, controlled, unemotional. Dear editor, I am the killer of the two teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl last 4th of July. To prove this, I shall state some facts which only I, plus the police, know. He listed details from both crime scenes, caliber of the weapon, the exact positions of the bodies, the car makes, and the angles of the shots. He signed off with a chilling demand. Here is a cipher, or part of one. The other two parts are being mailed to the Vallejo Times and SF Examiner. I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper. If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of 1st of August 69, I will go on a kill rampage Friday night. I will cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. It wasn't just a threat, it was a press release. The letter was accompanied by the 408-character cipher, divided into 3 parts, each section sent to a different newspaper. He had introduced himself not just as a killer, but as a brand. The birth of the Zodiac name. 3 days later, on August 4th, the San Francisco Examiner received another letter. This time, it was more personal, more specific, more sinister. Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking. It was the first time he used the name, a name borrowed from astrology, mystery, and perhaps Greek tragedy. The crosshair symbol, his personal logo, sat below his name. The killer wasn't just building a reputation, he was crafting a legacy, and now he had a name the world could fear. The first cipher cracked. It didn't take long for the public to respond. On August 8, 1969, a high school teacher named Donald Hardin and his wife Betty, sitting in their kitchen in Salinas, California, cracked the 408-character cipher. It read, chillingly, I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. It continued, menacingly, I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. There was no name. There was no clue to his identity, but the message was revealing, grotesque, disturbing, childlike in its phrasing, but ancient in its cruelty. He believed killing was a divine act, a method of collecting slaves for his rebirth in paradise. It wasn't a cipher anymore. It was a manifesto. Letter after letter. The Zodiac's communication didn't stop there. He continued to write, taunt, and threaten, sending at least 18 confirmed letters between 1969 and 1974. Each one showed evolution. Each one added layers to his character, like chapters in a book he was writing himself. October 13, 1969, flatly, I am the murderer of the taxi driver. This was the letter that confirmed the murder of Paul Stein, a San Francisco cab driver shot execution style in Presidio Heights. The letter included a horrifying detail, a torn piece of Stein's bloody shirt. Zodiac had taken a trophy and mailed it to the newspaper to prove it was him. A grim signature move used by serial killers who crave dominance. But he wasn't finished. Gleefully, school children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire, then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out. It was a grotesque threat, and it caused mass panic. School buses across Northern California were shadowed by police for weeks. Parents pulled their kids from class. The state held its breath, and Zodiac smiled behind his mask of anonymity. The ciphers continue, 340, 13, and beyond. As if to test the limits of obsession, the Zodiac released more ciphers. Z340, November 1969. Sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, this 340-character cipher remained unsolved for 15 years. In 2020, it was finally cracked by an international team of codebreakers using custom algorithms and machine learning. The decoded message? Tauntingly, I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Again, no name, no leads, just taunts. He knew he was being hunted, and he reveled in it. The 13-character cipher, April 1970. A postcard arrived that spring. This cipher was short. It was allegedly supposed to contain his identity, but no one could crack it. It looked like this.
My name is 13 cryptic symbols. Many believe it was nonsense, a joke. Others think it's still the Zodiac's final secret, locked in plain sight.
Psychological profile, the man behind the symbols. As the letters poured in, FBI profilers began trying to sketch the killer, not his face, but his mind. What they saw was terrifying. Highly intelligent, possibly with a background in cryptography, military service, or engineering. Emotionally detached, yet obsessed with control and recognition. Likely a narcissist, driven by ego, attention, and symbolic power. Exhibiting sadistic tendencies, a fascination with instilling fear as much as causing harm. The killer was not in a rush. He wanted a legacy. He wanted to be immortal. Symbolism of the crosshair. The symbol Zodiac used, an equal-armed cross within a circle, resembles a gun's crosshair. It may also represent the astrological zodiac wheel, the scope of a rifle, the sun cross, an ancient symbol of time, direction, and fate. For Zodiac, it became his signature. Each letter bore it, each cipher closed with it. He signed off like an artist completing a canvas. Threats beyond the killings. Not all letters were about murder. Some were about bombs. In June 1970, Zodiac claimed to have constructed a bomb powerful enough to threatening blow up a school bus. He included detailed schematics, down to wires and trigger mechanisms. Police took it seriously. Bomb squads were dispatched across California, and areas were evacuated. No bomb was ever found. But that wasn't the point. Zodiac didn't need to build a bomb. He built fear, and he used words to detonate it. Disappearance or evolution. After 1974, the letters stopped, or so it seemed. The last confirmed letter was sent to the Chronicle on January 29, 1974. It was titled Mocking Me, 37 SFPD, 0, on the quote, a final scorecard. He claimed 37 victims. The San Francisco Police Department, he mockingly said, had none. The letter included a review of the movie The Exorcist, calling it sarcastic, the best satirical comedy I have ever seen. Thoughtful, again, bizarre, off-topic, off-kilter, and then, long pause, silence. But some believe the Zodiac never stopped writing, just that the letters changed, or that he evolved, or someone else took over the story he began. With every stroke of his pen, the Zodiac didn't just communicate, he manipulated. He danced on the nerves of a terrified state. He sent reporters scrambling. He made detectives lose sleep. He buried investigators in leads, ciphers, false promises, and red herrings. He became more than a man. He became an idea. And ideas, unlike killers, are much harder to kill. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because while his words chilled the public, his next act would turn to blood again. The next scene of horror would unfold by a lake, in daylight, and this time, he came wearing a mask. By now, the Zodiac was a shadow, an idea more than a man. But on one bright September day, that shadow took form. A monster stepped into the sun. September 27, 1969, Lake Berryessa, Napa County, California. A calm, sunlit afternoon. The lake shimmered under the early fall sun. Leaves rustled. A breeze danced along the edge of the shore. To the average eye, this was paradise, a place for peace, picnics, and love. But for Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, it would become a place of nightmares. And for the Zodiac killer, it would mark a terrifying shift. Until now, he struck from the shadows. He attacked at night. He shot his victims, fast and distant. But on this day, in this place, he would do things dozfully. This time, he would wear a costume. This time, he would get closer. The couple by the water. Brian and Cecilia were college students from Pacific Union College. They'd known each other for years and shared a friendship that had grown into something deeper. That afternoon, they picked a spot on the lake shore, beneath a large oak tree with a gentle view of the water. They spread out a blanket. They laughed. They kissed. They had no idea they were being watched. The man in the shadows. From the cover of trees, someone observed them, silently, methodically. At around 6 p.m., Cecilia spotted movement. A figure was walking toward them, Slowly, deliberately, she nudged Brian. He looked up. The man was unlike anything they'd seen. He wore an executioner-style hood made of black fabric, with rectangular sunglasses sewn in. On his chest, drawn in white, was a symbol, a crosshair, the now infamous Zodiac insignia. The man held a large knife in a sheath on his belt, and in his hand, a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol. It wasn't just a disguise, it was a persona, a transformation. Zodiac had become a villain out of legend, and he was about to strike. The encounter. Brian stood up. The man approached within 20 feet and began to speak. His voice was calm, almost casual. He said he was an escaped convict from a prison in Montana. He needed money, a car, and to get to Mexico. He said he had killed before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. Brian, thinking fast, tried to reason with him. He kept eye contact, kept his voice calm. Cecilia, terrified, sat still. Then came the chilling moment. The man pulled out pre-cut lengths of clothesline and tossed them to Cecilia, commanding, "Tie him up." She did. Her hands trembled, but she bound Brian's wrists. The man then checked the knots and tightened them. He knelt and tied Cecilia too, her hands, her ankles. Then, wordlessly, he pulled out the knife. Brian barely had time to react before Zodiac plunged the blade into his back. Again and again. 6 times, Cecilia screamed. The killer turned to her. He stabbed her 10 times. Each thrust deliberate, powerful, mechanical. Then he stood and walked away, as if it meant nothing. A signature on the car. Minutes later, Zodiac approached Brian's white Carmen Ghia parked nearby. Using a black felt-tip pen, he scrawled a message on the car door. Vallejo, 12-2068, 7-4, 69 September 27, 69 to 6:30, by knife. It was his resume, a list of victims, dates, and now for the first time a weapon change. He had left guns behind. This was personal. This was theater. The call? At 7:40 p.m., about an hour after the attack, a call came in to the Napa Police Department. The man on the phone sounded composed, emotionless. His voice was monotone. "I want to report a murder. No, a double murder. They are 2 miles north of Park headquarters. They were in a white Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. I'm the one who did it." Then he hung up. Officers traced the call to a payphone near a car wash in Napa. Still off the hook when they arrived. A palm print was recovered from the receiver, but it never led to a suspect. The aftermath. Cecilia was unconscious when paramedics arrived. Brian was critically wounded, but still awake. They were airlifted to the Queen of the Valley Hospital. Cecilia Shepard died 2 days later. She was just 22. Brian Hartnell survived. He would become the only living male survivor of a Zodiac stabbing, and a key witness. Hartnell's testimony. From his hospital bed, Brian described the killer's voice, clothes, movements, and words. His memory was sharp. He remembered the hood, the gun, the knife, the lies about prison escape. He remembered the smell of the fabric, the calmness of his voice. The killer wasn't angry. He was cold, calculated, almost robotic, calmly. He didn't run. He walked away, like it was just another task he had finished. The masked killer. The Zodiac's costume changed the game. Until now, he had no face, just words. Now he had an image, a brand, black hood, crosshaired chest, sunglasses sewn in, knife in hand. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was evolving, like something out of a horror movie. He wanted to be remembered. He knew how to build fear, not just with death, but with design. And the media fed it. Newspapers printed artist renderings of the hooded killer. The symbol became an icon of dread. California parents were gripped by a new wave of fear, because now, Zodiac wasn't just a shooter, he was a stalker, a ritualist. Police response. Napa police flooded the area. They canvassed the lake, interviewed fishermen, brought in helicopters, roadblocks, sketch artists. No stone left unturned. But Zodiac had vanished. Again, no footprints led anywhere. No one saw him drive. No one saw a car. He had appeared from nowhere and vanished back into it. Some believed he lived nearby. Others suspected he came from the Bay Area just to kill, then escape unnoticed. The FBI profilers believed something more terrifying. He could be anyone, a teacher, a postman, someone who could disappear into crowds because he wants to. Media frenzy. The press was relentless. Headlines screamed, alarmed. Hooded killer strikes again, horrified. Zodiac now uses knife, victim survives, terrified. Crazed stalker lurks at Lake Berryessa. Zodiac had become a legend, and the public fed the fire. Tips poured in, many false, some delusional, but no suspects ever stuck. The message was clear, resigned. He was in control, helplessly, and we were all playing his game. A new Zodiac? The Lake Berryessa attack marked a psychological shift. For the killer, he took greater risks, broad daylight, public place. He revealed a new side, ritualistic, hands-on violence. He used a disguise, indicating pride, preparation, and arrogance. For the public, Zodiac was no longer a sniper. He was now a monster in the daylight, and that terrified them even more. Cecilia's memory. Cecilia Shepard was young, full of dreams, and weeks away from graduation. She was known for her smile, her kindness, her intelligence. Her death was brutal, senseless. The Zodiac didn't just take a life. He wore through the lives of her family, friends, and community. She became a symbol, a reminder that evil doesn't always hide in the dark. Sometimes it walks in daylight, wearing a mask. One survivor, many questions. Brian Hartnell would go on to speak about that day countless times. But one thing haunted him more than the pain, more than the fear. Why us? Why had Zodiac chosen them? Why that spot? Why that day? No one ever knew. Zodiac never gave a reason, never claimed that attack in detail, only in his usual cryptic references. But Brian lived. They lived to tell the story, to remind us that monsters don't always roar. Sometimes they whisper, sometimes they walk quietly, and sometimes they wear a hood and a symbol drawn in white. The Lake Berryessa attack wasn't Zodiac's bloodiest act, but it was his most theatrical. It revealed not just a killer, but a showman, a narcissist obsessed with legacy, a sadist addicted to fear. He left behind more than wounds. He left a performance, and the world was watching. But as we'll see next, the Zodiac's final confirmed murder would take place just 2 weeks later, in the middle of San Francisco, with witnesses, with noise. And for the first time, he would be seen, up close. No mask, no escape. The cipher remains, the name unknown, and the trail, cold, but not forgotten. But this is only the beginning. In part 2, we go deeper, into the suspects, the whispers, the false leads, and the final moments of a legacy that refuses to die. So stay sharp, stay curious, and most of all, stay glued to the untold trace. Part 2 drops soon, and trust us, you won't want to miss what comes next.